Hey everybody, welcome back to Field Pass Podcast. This is Zach here with my co-host Braden, and we're going to discuss this most recent week in football. Um, we were at a group on Sunday night, and him and I were having a conversation yesterday about just the despair that was filling my body as he watched me look down at my phone more and more as my Browns just spiraled into defeat. Not a great week for me, but we had a quite a quite a big, grand and big surprise in Duval County that I'm sure we'll hit here in just a moment. But Braden, why don't you walk us here into our first highlight of the week?
Yeah, and I think this is the big take is that the 49ers walked into Philadelphia and backed up their trash talk from a year ago. I don't know if you saw Zach, but Debo, after the NFC Championship last year, said if they had Purdy, they would have won by a lot. And then everyone this week was kind of like, it's like, you better back it up. And they did. I mean, what I think the final score was 42-19, I believe. And I mean, Debo had like 170 total yards and three touchdowns. So, yeah, I think they shocked pretty much everyone because I could have seen the 49ers winning, but I didn't see it like this. I didn't think Philly would completely fall apart like this, and I think it was pretty impressive to what they did, and this will play pivotal in the next couple of weeks if the Eagles lose another game because the 49ers got that tiebreaker over them from head to head.
Yeah, we've seen Debo really going on a media tour as it relates to the events that unfolded in that disastrous 49ers Eagles game in the playoffs last season. And you'll see Debo on K Adams, Up and Adams with K Adams, and basically taking any opportunity that he has to trash talk the Eagles and really anyone that stands in his way on the 49ers way to the playoffs. And the thing about the Eagles game is they had a chance to rematch and he took a massive advantage of that. We saw Debo run routes in the way that we haven't necessarily seen him produce in this season. Not that he's been underproductive or by any stretch of the imagination, but Debo hasn't necessarily been like a top five receiver per se. Whatever was kind of coagulating in his stomach as he was leading up to this game worked though. You saw him in the black Air Forces getting ready to be a menace to this entire Eagles team, and that is what he was. Uh, when you put on a dominant performance like that, the 49ers have really been able to reassert themselves as either the top dog or the top dog, depending on where you stand on it. And personally, I think that we just watched the two best teams in the NFL play football, and I don't know if this this result that we saw is indicative of every time that this team plays football. If I had to guess, I would probably give it 2-3. Sorry, like 2-1 49ers would win that game. Um, with Brock Purdy producing the way that he's producing, uh, I think that he should be getting the respect that I think he has been lacking by kind of like the peanut gallery, like your standard NFL commentator, and amateur NFL commentator like Braden and I. But I do find that it's quite. I struggle to give him any MVP consideration because I do think that while he's not an untalented individual, he's not an individual that is lacking in talent by any means. Uh, he is surrounded by a whole host of receivers and skill position players that help to make him who he is. So I'm not like a Brock Purdy hater by any stretch of the imagination, and he was able to produce in a really important and grand way at getting back at this Philly team. Um, but I think we should maybe pump the brakes a little bit as it relates to MVP considerations because I think that there are some candidates that are being overlooked, like Dak Prescott and like Tyreek Hill. But that's all I'll say on that matter. That's a whole other discussion that we can have on a later date.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but if Brock Purdy keeps having the performances like he did last week, I mean, he's gonna put himself in that conversation with these performances. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
way
don't
too early
hate
to
it.
tell too, because I mean, there's still another month of football.
I don't hate it, and I don't want to come off. I don't want to sound like this person who is discrediting that achievement because it is like a really good achievement. The truth of it is we've seen a whole lot of just crap quarterback play this year, and Brock Purdy has been able to be functional within this 49ers offense. And that is to his credit. There were so many other quarterbacks I think that you could put in this offense and wouldn't be nearly as successful just in their own right. So he's deserving of the success that he has. He's deserving of some of the considerations that he has. I just think that when it comes to deciding him over someone else who's maybe in a situation that may not be as palatable, or a situation where maybe someone else could be a little bit more plug and play, they should get the nod. But like you said, this is something that's going to be unfolding over the course of these not last couple of weeks, because we still have a while, but the rest of the regular season. And I think that it's something worth monitoring.
Yeah. And moving on to the other quarterback candidate you missed, Cowboys won a shootout almost on Thursday night. Now, me and you were watching this game together, but I mean, the Cowboys were down. I I don't remember how much. I know they were down in like late third, early fourth, and they ended up driving down the field scoring with Pollard, and then yeah, I mean they were able to hold off. What did you think of this Cowboy performance? Like, because I mean, this is the first team they beat with a winning record, are 500 now.
Yeah, I was interested in how high scoring it was. The Seahawks, especially when Cleveland played them, they seemed to enter kind of like a lull period. As soon as the first quarter ends, and it was kind of like clockwork, like a immediate sheet fell, and for the next 2 quarters, they're really not going to produce, or at least that's what it seemed like in that particular game. And the Cowboys defense really wasn't able to kind of put that expectation on it, or they weren't able to materialize that kind of role that the Seahawks offense has fallen into. And that largely is due to DK Metcalf and him really becoming unlocked in a way that we haven't really seen this season. For 6 receptions, 134 yards, and 3 touchdowns, DK Metcalf, pardon me, was clearly their most impactful receiver. And there was clearly issues guarding him as it related to the Cowboys DB room. And maybe that's something that we should be considering. I think that maybe we could be falling into a situation where Bland is kind of having Trayvon Diggs syndrome, as
Yeah, I was about to say
like
that.
with the way that he plays. He's able to produce and create these massive turnovers, but when it comes to guarding these like massive and particularly physical receivers, and that of DK Metcalf, he really struggles. Now he did have a pick in this game, and it was an important one at that. But the DB room is something worth monitoring going forward with Cowboys, and I think that I don't want to describe this as a big win, because it is, and the Seahawks offense isn't incapable, but it's something that DK Metcalf isn't going to be the worst receiver this team is going to go up against, especially with their deep playoff aspirations. So they got to get that figured out, and figure it out quick.
And one thing I want to point out is your Seahawks prediction from a couple weeks ago is looking real nice. They are back to 500, and they still got. It's gonna be very tough for them to get in the playoffs, I think. And even though they played really good on Thursday night, they didn't get the job done. And
No, man,
that,
and here's the thing, like I don't see them winning this game that we're going to talk about here on Sunday. Just to give you a little bit of a sneak peek against the Niners, I don't see them beating the Eagles, even with the way that they got swamped. And then they got like 3 relatively easy games, but I mean, even the Steelers and the Cardinals, they're sneaky, man.
and
Like
that would only put them at 9-8 in this NFC. Both honestly, NFC and AFC are both really competitive, and 10-win teams may not even make the playoffs this year. So it's going to be the Seahawks are going to have to work some magic.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get it together. And I mean, here's the thing, putting up that many points on the Cowboys is a feat in and of itself. Like the Seahawks should be proud that that happened. I mean, you should be proud, but that pales in comparison to beating the Cowboys. And that's not going to have any effect on your record as putting up that many points and winning, obviously. So the question for them is, can you execute? And the odds are increasingly looking like they cannot.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one. This one I think is near and dear to your heart.
Jake Browning masterclass, baby. I mean, What he was like, he threw for 350 yards. He had two touchdowns, and he had I think it was four complete. He was 32 for 37, so five incompletions. And Mixon showed up as well. The Bengals offense was very serviceable. I mean, Zach was mentioning maybe it's the Jags defense, but they got the job done. They went to Jacksonville. I know Trevor Lawrence got hurt at the end, which probably played a role into them winning that game. But the one thing to take away from that game is that Jake Browning was able to hold his own. He didn't play the best against the Steelers, but he bounced back and he won AFC Player of the Week. So I mean that has to count for
Yeah,
something. And I the rest of this season is very interesting. They're behind. Here, let me pull this up. They're behind the Steelers,
the Browns and the
Colts,
Colts.
and the Browns, and they have all three of those teams on their schedule left.
I
So
think
if
you have
they
the tiebreaker on Buffalo though.
yeah, and we have the tiebreaker on Buffalo. So like I mean, if the Bengals win these games, they can fall in the playoffs. It's not very likely because I mean, it's just one game, so we can't really overreact too much. But I mean, if Browning can play like this constantly, I mean, we still have a chance. So we just need to see the same play. 'Cause, I mean, Joe Burrow is a really big loss. He's one of the best QBs in the league, and I mean, you don't have to like do as good as him, but you got to be at least a game manager QB.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's the truth of it. I mean, I can't remember. Has Cincinnati played the Steelers yet?
Yeah, we lost. Yeah, we lost last week,
Yeah, I can see you actually winning that Steelers game.
especially
Just
with Pickett
especially
out.
certainly with Pickett out, but also just the way that the culture seems to be collapsing. You would think that getting rid of Canada would sort of remedy this and kind of have like a rally around the flag. Um, the flag being Tomlin and just like the success of the team and what they have on the line. But that hasn't happened. With the loss of Pickett, you kind of see like shade almost getting thrown by Najee Harris. So I think a report, like it was like a beat reporter asked Najee, like what sort of like leadership that Trubisky can add to this offense and like what factor he plays in that. And Najee said something along the lines of it's just like a very vocal leadership. And then he also threw in the I guess what the ending to that sentence was I guess. So it's like it seems like the culture has really taken a hit, especially with the loss like that on on Sunday against the Cardinals, which they really should have won. Um, it's just not a fun day to be a Steeler. And with the AFC North, we do see we generally see uh splitting of games since you have to play each other twice. It's more often than not that you're gonna have a team split than I guess get beat on both occasions. So I don't know. I that's knowing what I know about our division, it would be interesting to see how that plays out, especially with Browning looking that good. I mean, I don't know what the odds were that he would win AFC Offensive Player of the Week, but that it happened. That Jake
Yeah,
Browning was able to make that happen. And like Brayden had mentioned, this Jags defense looked absolutely miserable. And I started them, which was something that really didn't end up affecting me that much. But I had faith in them to at least be able to handle Jake Browning. Um, I mean, there were a number of plays in which Jake Browning was able to connect. He was able to be serviceable. And as much as Zach Taylor is kind of not credited, but he's kind of like assigned what I saw today. He's kind of like the Ryan Day of the NFL. He was able to make Jake Browning productive and get it to the most important players on this offense. And then also Joe Mixon was able to look really good, which is something that not it's not that
he's
he
had
has
a
never been
couple good
good.
games.
He has had a couple of good games, but if you can keep producing on that level, obviously you're going to have a decent offense with or without Jake Browning. And then you also had a number of members of your defense who showed up as well. So I wouldn't say that the Bengals are in ideal playoff position, but they're certainly not out at this
Yeah,
point.
they're not out of playoff contention yet.
Yeah, yeah. So if you start to pile up losses, eh, we could probably reach into a spot. We could probably down the line say that you're out, but at this point, and with this win on Sunday, you're certainly not.
Yeah.
So it's a big win for the Bengals, especially for this season. But here's the thing. I think Bengals fans do need to make up their mind about whether or not they want a top 10 draft pick or like a high draft pick, or if they want to make a deep playoff run. That's going to have to be a discussion you're going to have to
I just want these
you have
games to
around your
be
fan base.
watchable, bruh. Because I mean
Okay,
that
that's fair.
Steelers Bengals one was not.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the you just had mentioned that. I don't know why I asked if this they just played the Steelers and the Bengals. Yeah, that was a miserable game. All right, yeah, that was not fun. All right, I want to take this one because I'm a little bit ashamed of my lack of faith and my switch up on Jordan Love because initially, and I think I do deserve some credit for at least pointing this out at the start. I did believe that Aaron Rodgers was able to instill a number of good traits within Jordan Love, and I thought he would be really solid uh coming out of camp. And he was. He had a pretty decent game against the Bears. And after that, it was kind of a mediocre and really lacking quarterback example of quarterback play going forward. Um, until this most recent Chiefs game and the Lions game before, Jordan Love has really been on one, to be honest. He was 25 for 36, threw for 267 yards and 3 touchdowns. And was really able to keep this offense rolling, especially with when you consider some of the limitations that they have. They don't have Aaron Jones. He's been out for a number of games recently, but you do have AJ Dillon, who is able to receive, sorry, not to receive, to gain 73 yards on 18 attempts, which are good numbers. I mean, for against the Chiefs, who Patrick Mahomes believes is the best iteration of the Chiefs defense. That's something to be proud of. So I think that, not to say that Jordan Love is the next Aaron Rodgers or anything like that, or that he is ever going to rise to that level of success and uh, achievement. But the Packers just also found a way to make something out of nothing and develop a potentially good player into an actual good player. So we're seeing Jordan Love actually produce in a way that uh, Packers fans can be proud about, and they're sitting in a pretty decent spot despite being at 500 as it relates to the playoffs going forward. They have a really decent shot, and I don't know if that means winning the division. I think that the Lions will end up they have too much of a lead, but I think a wild card spot is within their future.
Yeah, I mean they've looked really impressive these last 2 weeks. I think all of us just expected them to get trampled on Thanksgiving, them going to Detroit and everything, and they proved everyone wrong. And then I thought they would like lose. I thought maybe it was just a 1 week thing. They caught the Lions off guard, but no, I mean they did it again, and it was in Lambeau, but I mean it was still an impressive victory. I mean the on the final interception, the cornerback pretty much ran the route. Like that's how they're spending. And he mentioned he saw that on film, so they're putting an effort. And I think one one of my Packers friends said, Andy, that was on here, said that I think they're taking the training wheels off and letting LaFleur run his system. Like because he had to run what Aaron Rodgers wanted to for however many years he was the coach with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know the years off the top of my head, but he was they're running his system now, and it's better suited for Jordan Love, and he's taking the training wheels off, and he's slinging the rock. Like he's throwing it all over the field. He's making throws, and I'm interested to see like how long they can keep this going. But I mean, because I mean, they if you look at their schedule, they have a very easy one coming. They've played all their tough games already.
They
So
don't play anyone over 500.
yeah, so they could very easily walk into the wild card.
Yeah, I think that it's likely with the schedule that they have
Yeah.
going forward. It's like Giants, Buccaneers, Bears, the really the most accomplished opponent they have going forward are the Vikings, and we may have been seeing we may be on the beginning of seeing some Josh Dobbs regression to the mean. I hope not for his sake, but if the trend continues from this most recent Bears win, uh, they are not a team to be afraid of with the way that that offense looked. All right, and then this last highlight that we really want to get to is just how impactful injuries are this year. Um, Braden, especially when we think about quarterback play, uh, how impactful do you think injuries have been to like not just like individual teams per se, but just the entire league as a whole this season?
I think it's a mixture of both because I mean it's what? It's up to like 8 or 9 starting QBs that are out for the year. I mean, even some running backs and other positions, and it's just like I don't know what it is. I don't know if we've ever had like we've always had injuries, but it feels like they're like really increased this year. It really does, and I don't know what like the problem is. I don't know if it's the turf some like teams are using because I mean we've all heard the complaints about MetLife, and I think that that field especially if you play there, you're risking like you have a high chance of getting injured. Because I mean, someone tears their Achilles, feels like they're almost every time they play. But it's very impactful because it ruins team seasons. I mean, it's tanked the Browns. They were on a roll. It's definitely tanked the Bengals. We got Jake Browning. And then for teams like the Jets who end up with Tim Boyle and everything, like are the Giants, they lost Daniel Jones and now I mean, which I get isn't that good, but like they're now turning to an undrafted free agent, Tommy DeVito. I mean, who won a game, but like it was against the Patriots, so we're not really sure. It's just like they're like it's just yeah, it's ruining team seasons and it's a lot more noticeable this year because it's happening so often. And it's a concern for me at least.
Yeah, I don't think that there's been any. It would be helpful going forward, or sorry, I guess going back like 10 years in the future, and hopefully this isn't the new norm, obviously. But if there was some sort of reason as to why this was happening that we end up finding out, um, it would be interesting to figure out, but I think we're just genuinely unlucky. Like we have a number of
Yeah.
teams who have had awful things happen to them repeatedly over and over and over again. And like you had mentioned that the like losing Daniel Jones, it although we are kind of low on Daniel Jones, like you and I, it, the truth of it is you do plan your entire offseason to have Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback for at least most of the year. Like so you there's a whole lot of pivoting that has to go into that. You have to get um people ready and get started. And then on top of that, you have Tyrod Taylor who gets injured. And now you have to move on to Tommy DeVito who is an undrafted free agent. Like that and the fact that he's won a game, like it that's great, but the fact that we have to say that that's like a positive is it just speaks to how awful the season has been as it relates to QB injuries. I don't think that this is due to anything in particular. I mean, the Browns lost Nick Chubb in the second week of the year just due to it. I'm not going to call it a dirty hit or anything, but just an awful
Yeah,
hit
that's just
on
like
Nick on Chubb.
half of these are just football hits.
Yeah,
Like
and I don't think yeah.
the you could say the DTR hit was a little more dirty, but that Chubb one, like that's a football hit, and it's just it is injuries are part of the game, but
Mhm.
I feel like they're a lot. So it's increased this year.
I do think though that like the hip drop tackle, it I know that it's something that has been so integral to a number of just it's just the way that you tackle. Like it's just it's an important way that you're going to get someone to the ground, but it is very dangerous with the way that it's been executed, especially recently. We saw that tackle on Mark Andrews that essentially ended his season. There are talks that maybe he could come back if they make a deep playoff run, but it's we've seen that, and just the way that it looks too, it doesn't look particularly like a tackle doesn't look good, like because obviously someone's getting thrown to the ground, but like there are better ways to do it, and if you're essentially like falling on and creasing an individual's like leg from the knee and dropping them like that, I think that is something that we should consider looking at going forward as potentially being uh, a bannable method of tackling. I know just personally in Australia, we have bans against that type of tackling in rugby, which you could potentially argue is even more physical in football due to the lack of pads and the lack of sort of the protective gear that that you would have in football. So I think that that might be a good change that we could help to mitigate that, but there really is nothing more that we can do about quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a it's just part of the game at this point. I mean, it's a lot more noticeable because it's happening so often. I mean, there's not really another way to put it. I mean, they're just out of your control, really. It's not like you can like say no, this person's not going to get injured. It's just like
Yeah, it's like it's been this scourge following everybody, to be honest. Like I feel like half of the times people have been injured, it's like you just wake up and they're no longer there in the
yeah.
season. It's just like
You
I
go
know
to bed, Joe
it's like you
Burrow's
wake
still
up,
the starting quarterback. You wake up and he's not.
everyone is dead on the Niners.
Yeah.
like like and now we have Pickett out. And that and I'm only bringing that up because that's probably going to tank their season as well, just
Yeah,
as it
for
relates to the
sure.
culture. And then obviously the quarterback play is important. But speaking of Pickett, let's head over to our games of the week, where we're going to discuss these upcoming games. The Patriots and Steelers one, which is coming up tomorrow night in Thursday Night Football.
Thriller.
Um, yeah, I know they should have flexed this one. I'm joking.
Yeah.
And they can't do that. But
And
Braden,
you
what do you
can
have to say about
actually
the
flex
Patriots?
Thursday night football games. It just has to be like a couple weeks out in advance.
Okay, got it.
Like, but they definitely should have. This this is awful. Like Patriots lost. Teams are 52-3 when holding their other teams to 10 or lower points. The three is the Patriots. In the like the Colts, the Giants, and Chargers, they lost. I believe those are the three teams they held to 10 points. I know for a fact it was Giants, Chargers, but their defense is playing well, but their offense is looking awful. And obviously the Steelers have a a great defense, and we don't know what this Mitch Trubisky thing is, but the Steelers have a better defense than the Patriots. So the Steelers are more likely to score more points than the Patriots defense. So I am picking the Steelers because I don't that there's no way I can pick the Patriots after the last two games they played.
Yeah, basically the the situation is if the Steelers get a touchdown, this game should be over.
Yeah, it's
And
like Iowa.
yeah, and I just believe that the Steelers can get a touchdown, plain and simple. Like even with Mitch Trubisky, who as much as I dog on Kenny Pickett, like he's worse than Kenny Pickett. And I honestly do think that even with the defense that's played so well, the Steelers also have a number of rushing weapons that they could utilize. Najee Harris has not been great this season, but it's, I think that that is more so outlined or highlighted by Jalen Warren being so good. Uh, with the way that he's been able to come out and have these really explosive runs, uh, I think that he's able to put the whole team on his back. I mean, I was gripping my seat watching him do it against the Browns when they played, just because it looked like there was nothing you could do to stop him. And the Patriots defense is obviously going to give him a hard time, but the truth of it is, I just think that they're able to get it. They're able to get it done. Now, this is something that I guess wasn't as I wouldn't pick. Actually, I did pick this because I look like a fool. We picked the Steelers to beat the Cardinals, and it did not go that way at all. The
Uh,
Cardinals with Kyler were actually looked like they were able to get stuff going. I mean, you had James Conner run for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. This isn't the Cardinals though. The Patriots have no semblance of an offense, especially with Ramondre Stevenson out. It's dead. They're done and dusted. They're in the Caleb Williams or Drake May sweepstakes. Give me the Steelers.
yeah, and I think most people are gonna so this because we have questions about the Steelers offense, but we know the Patriots offense is so bad that there's no way they like unless if the Steelers also get shut out. This may be a 0-0 tie. That's more likely than the Patriots winning, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think that's more likely than the Steelers scoring 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
this is gonna be a dreadful Thursday night
yeah.
game.
It wasn't really that good even back when they scheduled it. Like
I
this is
think
one of the situations where it's like, okay, you guys kind of deserve the flack that you're getting from this
I
because this
mean,
was never
it's
good.
I just don't you can't really schedule multiple teams Thursday nights
Yeah.
in a season, so I mean they gotta spread the love, but like this is just bad. But moving on to our 1 o'clock slates, Texans who lost Tank Dell, which is another injury, versus Zach Wilson is back in the New York Jets. I don't think that's gonna matter because I think we've seen this Texan CJ Stroud and this team move on good defenses throughout the year. And I think that Houston will win this one by a couple scores because they'll be able to put up points and the Jets offense will not.
Yeah, so the Texans have kind of been my other team that I've been rooting for this season, especially mostly because I have Tank Dell in fantasy. Um, or at least I had Tank Dell in fantasy before he got messed up on a play that he really had no reason to be out on the field. Um, and also you got CJ Stroud playing for them, and it's been great to see him just put up literally a legendary rookie career or a rookie season. Um, so yeah, that Tank Dell injury hurt, man. It hurt my feelings, and I will forever have beef with the Denver Broncos because man, they hit hard. I think I said this. I think I said this last week, dude. They're killers. They like. I don't know if it's the Sean Payton aspect of it, but dude, I don't ever want to see them again. And I have a friend who's a big Texans fan, and we were texting him, and I was like, dude, something bad is going to happen. I just hope it's not. I hope it's not too impactful, and unfortunately, it was. Like that's going to be something that they're bothered with for the rest of the season. Tank Dell has had a really great connection with CJ Stroud. Um, Nico Collins and Robert Woods are good on the field, and I mean they will be functional. And you saw Nico Collins really step up in that game with the lack of Tank Dell. Um, but it's going to hurt going forward. And the reason I'm talking about the Texans going forward is because they're probably going to. I really do think that they'll make the playoffs, and that will mostly be that will be boosted by this week's win over the Jets by them. I think that it's going to be a pretty convincing win that like you mentioned. Despite this Jets defense playing super well, holding the Falcons to the amount of points that they did this weekend,
Yeah, but the
the
Falcons
Texans are just
offense
solid.
already isn't that like dynamic. The Texans have one of the most explosive offenses in the league, even without Tank Dell. Because I mean, Nico Collins stepped up in a big way, and if he can continue to do that, it'll be big. I mean, it won't be like having him out there, but it'll be good enough. You know what I'm saying? They still
Yeah,
have
but
they they still have plenty of other weapons. That is probably their biggest weapon though.
the irritating thing is that the Falcons should have at least a competent offense. Like they have weapons. I, with you obviously still have Algier, you have Robinson who, and then you also have Kyle Pitts who
And
Jerome
Drake
Blaine
London.
has more touchdowns than that dude in his entire career and or this season in his entire career. And it's like it if I'm the GM of the Atlanta Falcons, and I know we haven't gotten here yet, but it's like dude, enough with the mad scientist Arthur Smith antics. Like, just get the ball to your people who are going to produce. Heck, you still have Cordell Patterson on the team who is a qualified, incredibly good running back still at his age. So I don't know. That's my rant on them. They always make me mad. But yeah, just give me the Texans.
All right, moving on is Rams Ravens. Rams obviously came off a win against the Browns, and Ravens, I believe, had a bye.
They did. They're coming off the
Yeah.
bye week. Yep.
Um, I think, I mean, Joe Flacco was in the Browns offense. What was the final? It was 20-27, or 19-27,
Yeah,
right?
but the game was essentially over at that point when they scored that last touchdown.
Yeah,
It
so
was
like they, I mean, the Broncos and our Browns and Ravens probably have similar defenses. So the interesting thing is, can this Rams defense hold Lamar in this offense? And I think the answer to that is no, they will not. Because I mean, I saw Joe Flacco go in there and be able to put a couple drives together to score for you guys to be able to score some points. And I think if Joe Flacco can do it, Lamar Jackson and this offense can. So I have, and it's in Baltimore, which I feel like the Rams don't play the best when they're away from home. At least this year, it's felt like that. So I'm gonna go Ravens.
Yeah, I am also going to go Ravens in this one. I think that the fact that um they're coming off of a bye week is something that I mean is going to really give life to the offense and really both sides of the ball, to be honest. The Ravens have a killer defense, and with the bye week they're going to feel refreshed and ready to go. And with them being at home, it's they rarely lose in Baltimore. Um, so I think that with the way that the Rams travel, uh, and although they looked decent against the Browns this week, I think that the way that the defense is being criticized is a little bit overblown. Uh, Puka Nacua with against the DBs in Cleveland. Greg Newsome didn't let up a catch on Nacua, and Martin Emerson only let up one catch for 3 yards. And then with Cooper Kupp, Newsome let up one catch for 13 yards and Martin Emerson for 6. The real like the real driving force of this offense was due to explosive plays, and the way this and what happened when plays just broke down. And I think that although I would put my faith in Cleveland to limit those normally, um, I think that if you ran it back, or like if they weren't so injured, they would be able to handle them, and those big plays wouldn't happen. And I think that that's just the situation that the Ravens are in right now. Um, so with the way that their offense is solid, and with Kyren Williams in the backfield, like that is certainly a big addition as well. Um, I just don't think that it's going to be enough. They're not going to win a shootout against the Ravens if it were to be that, and I don't think it's ever going to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I'll take the Ravens. All right, moving on to the next one. Let's go for the Panthers and the Saints in a game that is not going to be fun for anyone. It's not going to look good. It's not going to be entertaining. Well, it may be entertaining, but like it's just going to be gross, man. We're looking at the 1-11 Panthers, who, according to a number of uh, outlets, have just completely set their franchise on fire and are struggling to find stability. Uh, I saw an article by The Athletic today, essentially alluding to like basically everyone within that franchise under Frank Reich trying to like look out for just themselves, especially like executives within front office, like actively texting David Tepper behind their back, sorry, behind Frank's back. And it's just like it doesn't seem like a great situation for anyone to be in. I'm sure people are regretting, at least initially, drafting Bryce Young, which I think is a little bit too early. But I mean, that conversation is obviously happening within that franchise. Um, and even with that being true, even with all those being true, I think that this game won't be super a dominant showing by the Saints. This team is not good in out of Carolina, but the Saints always find a way with Derek Carr to just make seemingly easy things complicated. And I think they may win by 10 points, but it's not going to look good. Here's my bit on the Saints. When you have Taysom Hill in there and he's on a roll, keep him in the game. Like keep him in the game until something goes wrong because he almost looks better than Derek Carr in a number of situations. He gives you a weight, he gives you like a rushing component that I'd say not David Carr, Derek Carr doesn't. And I also have him on my fantasy team, so I'm a little bit partial. But yeah, give me the Saints.
Yeah, the Saints are the most inconsistent team in the league right now. Like like they will I don't even know what to call it. They just don't like if you expect them to win, they lose, and then if you expect them to lose, they win. Like they don't play they play different every week. Like you if you see Derek Carr have one good game, he has like two or three bad games, then a good game again. The only person that's been consistent on this offense is Kamara since he's been back. But this Panthers team, they're dealing with way too much stuff off the field for me to even think they win this game. Like, because this is a game that they can win, but I think they just got too many distractions of what's going on outside the team itself for them to really be able to focus. So I have Saints winning, but I like this game isn't a lock, even though it's against the Panthers for the Saints the way they've been playing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Now moving on to Colts Bengals. This game for me is very interesting because I mean Jonathan Taylor's out, and we saw the Colts, they won in Tennessee, but we didn't see like the best offensive perform. I mean, their highlight was the two blocked punts, which caused the special teams coach to get fired from the Titans, and that gave them really good field position. And the Bengals went into Jacksonville and won. This is in Cincinnati. If this was in Colts, in Indianapolis, I would go with the Colts. But since it's in Cincinnati and home field does matter, I have the Bengals. Now, this game is going to be very close because this Bengals defense has not played the greatest. They let up a gajillion yards to Kenny Pickett, and they have not had. They've had good performances, but they've had a couple bad ones. So I'm not like this game can very easily go either way. Especially Jake Browning had to play like he did in Jacksonville. If he did the way he did against Pittsburgh, the Colts are going to kill us. But I'm counting Jake Browning to do what he did on Monday and them to find a way to win in a one possession game because I feel like this is going to be a dogfight against two backup quarterbacks, which are multiple matchups this week.
Yeah, so I agree that if this game is going to be won by the Bengals, it's going to have to be on the shoulders of Jake Browning performing in the way that he did against the Jaguars, and I don't see that happening. I think that with this Colts defense, um, I don't think Jake Browning is going to be able to replicate that performance, especially with the fact that the Colts are the second leading team for sacks in the um in the league, and then they also have Grover Stewart coming back from PED suspension. So it's like that's just another aspect of your offense that's going to be limited uh, by an already dominant Colts defense who has really found a way to turn losses into wins. Um, and I know this isn't defense, obviously, but a special teams that is incredibly competent and is able to aid and put themselves in situations where wherever they're out in the field is in their favor. Um, you're right that Jonathan Taylor is out, and that's a real big shame, especially given that he was kind of getting on a roll. But I really do believe in Zach Moss and his capacity to drive on this Bengals defense. Um, you do have solid, you do have a solid component of your defense in that of DJ Reader, but that's almost where it begins and ends. Not that the Bengals defense isn't good by any means. They do have like a solid defense, and I would kind of call it like above average to around middle of the line. Um, but here's the thing. I think one of the biggest aspects is something that you mentioned there at the end, in that although this is two backup quarterbacks, in my opinion, they're in completely different situations.
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew has settled into this Colts offense and has been able to put together a number of game-winning drives. We saw that in that overtime win against the Titans this weekend. And although the loss of Anthony Richardson was devastating, and it will it'll always be a question mark as to what this team would have looked like um, with him really leading this offense and with a competent defense. Um, but Gardner Minshew has been definitely serviceable, and I think that with them being in different situations and the gains on defense that they've been able to make over the weekend, and also just the vetted portfolio that they've put together, I think that the Colts are going to win this one out. But I think it will be close that you had mentioned. I think that
Yeah, this game is
they
going
will
to
go
be
strong.
it's just, it literally could go either way. Like I feel like it's like yeah, it really comes down to how Jake Browning plays. That's really the deciding factor, I
Yeah,
feel
and
like.
I just see him getting frazzled. Like I see him struggling with with kind of with decision making as it relates to getting rid of the ball quickly, because although this is a better Bengals offensive line than we've seen in recent years, it's still not great.
Yeah.
And I think the Colts are going to be able to capitalize on it. But I understand that your rationale. If you just believe that he can roll it over, I can totally see them winning this game. Them being the Bengals. Okay. Um, with that in mind, let's head over to our next game, which is the Buccaneers Falcons. Which we don't really know who's going to come out of this NFC North. It's been
South.
NFC South. It's been really ugly, and at this current point, the Falcons are at the top with a 6-6 record at 500. Um, with that, the Buccaneers could be in a prime position to come into contention with them. With a win against them this weekend, it is at the Falcons, and with the way that this team has been producing, uh, that team being the Buccaneers, I think I am going to have to give it to the Falcons. Uh, although I just ranted and I went on this whole thing about the Falcons offense being incompetent and that largely being due to Arthur Smith and his weird and strange ways. I think that this Falcons defense is actually kind of overlooked. And that largely is due to the play by Jesse Bates. He has been incredible for this team for this season, and that pickup uh, is probably up there with one of the more impactful changes that a team has made in the NFL in the off season for this season. Like it's probably top five as relates to how he's been able to help this team produce wins and generate turnovers. Uh, with that in mind, I don't see this game being like a defensive masterclass, although the Buccaneers defense is solid. Uh, with the way that Baker connects with Mike Evans, I think that it's bound to happen. There's bound to be some sort of explosive play. If I had to give a score prediction, it's probably going to be, I'd probably put it at like 14-24 or something like that, Falcons.
Yeah. When I was like looking at this game, I was like, I mean, these teams are like very similar. But
Mm-hmm.
then I remember one thing. It's the difference how well the Falcons play at home. Is they they are a completely different team when they are at home. They it feels like I don't know what the record is at home this year, but it has to be well above 500. And that was literally the sole fact of me picking the Falcons over the Buccaneers because I feel like these teams both have a underrated defense, like not really talked about that much, and kind of struggling offenses. And they have one or two good players on each that like usually make plays. and that being Mike Evans, and then on the Falcons, either Drake London or sometimes Bijan are, if they decide to use Kyle Pitts, maybe. But I just remember that the Falcons always play really, really, really tough at home, and it's really hard to walk in there and win. So I am
Yeah, they
picking
are 4-2 at home.
yeah, I'm picking the Falcons to win at home versus the Buccaneers and to avenge their loss from earlier this season. Like, yeah, that I can. This game is kind of like the Bengals Colts one, where it could go either way.
Yeah, I think that's a fair read, especially, and I think that them being at home is an impactful part.
Yeah. And
All right,
moving on to
let's go for this next game. Jags Browns, which um previously before the Trevor Lawrence injury, the Jags were about 3-point favorites. Since then it shifted to around 2.5 Browns. And I think that it's fair. Like the line being in the Jags' favor has I think is informed, and I think that that makes sense, especially with the way that this Browns defense hasn't looked super dominant in these last 2 weeks. They have really missed Denzel Ward, like to the probably the grandest degree that you could miss somebody. Um, Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson have really struggled. Now, like I mentioned before, against the Rams, it really wasn't as bad as it may have looked. Um, but it was about as bad as it could get against who was it? It was Denver. Yeah, with Cortland Sutton put Greg Newsome in a blender like 17 times, and I never want to see it again. It was miserable, and I currently have a lawsuit in progress within the state of Colorado with the Denver Broncos organization for making me go through that process. The good news is for Cleveland is that Denzel Ward looks like he will be returning this week. He's practicing, and he should be a member of this defense, which is encouraging for everyone on the Cleveland side of things. Additionally, we had this injury with Myles Garrett that was an injury and then it wasn't. And then when we watched this most recent game against the Rams, it very clearly was like he wasn't as productive. He looked less explosive and he wasn't able to create in the way that he normally does. And that was concerning from a from a Browns fan perspective. I think just with them actually being at home during this game and then being able to recoup and kind of mitigate those injuries on defense, this will look like a much better defense, especially with a backup quarterback potentially leading the charge on the Jags side of things. I also hope that they start Joe Flacco. As much as I like DTR, we kind of have this like quarterback controversy. Um, Joe Flacco was able to throw in a way that I haven't seen a Cleveland quarterback throw in a really long time. And if you give him more time and he continues to produce, that's good enough. And I hope to see that this week. And if it doesn't work like that, put DTR in. But once we make a decision, there has to be some sort of continuity, so it can't keep going back and forth.
yeah, I think this will be. I'm I'm gonna pick the Browns here, and not and it comes down. I don't know. I mean, CJ Beathard had his moments against Cincinnati, but like I've already pointed out that Cincinnati hasn't really played that good of defense the past couple weeks, and I know the Browns are levels above them. Especially they got especially if Denzel Ward's back, they got the coverage to do it, and they and ETN had ETN his most of his yards, even really his runs ones have been like him catching the ball on the outside in space. And they're I feel like the Browns are going to be able to handle that pretty well. And once they figure out this quarterback situation, it'll be a lot better for them. So I'm picking the Browns here because it's in Cleveland, right? It's in Cleveland.
It is, yeah, it's
Yeah.
at home, which is great because these past 2 weeks have been on the road. Um,
Yes.
I think it'll just be good for the team to be home.
Yeah, so I think the Browns will be able to win this one. I saw a report today that Trevor Lawrence isn't completely. If he finds a way to place, I think that'll end up being worse because he won't be mobile at all. And
Yeah, I agree. I think that him playing against this defense it would show massive incompetence by the Jags franchise, especially with the record that they have.
yeah, so I mean, you said Trevor Lawrence this week. Just I think you just take this loss and then bounce back next week. But yeah, I think most people are gonna have Browns here just because of C.J. Beathard.
Here's the thing though, like it's not obviously when you're coming down in the stretch like this, we have 5 games left. Like and the Jags are sitting at 8 wins. You want to try and win every game, like to put yourself in a possibility for better seeding and just putting yourself in a position to win and just like make the playoffs. Um, but if I'm Doug Peterson and I'm the Jags front office, it's like this is what you got going forward. You got the Ravens, who are going to be hard, and you would hope that Trevor Lawrence would be able to be fully ready and capable to go in that moment. And an injury that would exacerbate what he has right now against the Browns would make that situation potentially unwinnable. Then you got which even if you lose these next 2 games, you're fine. You got the Buccaneers, the Panthers, and the Titans. You're already seeing it at 8 wins. Realistically, all you really need to do is win 2 games, and you may be able to get by on just one. So if I'm Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence isn't sniffing the field.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah, we've already seen Joe Burrow go through that, and it didn't really work. So, especially
No,
against the Browns.
you guys kept bleeding games, and like that wasn't. I don't necessarily. I think that you guys would have ended up losing those games even with Browning, but you could have done that without putting Burrow through the risk like the tumbler that you did. But
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it didn't end up mattering because of something completely out of control.
Yeah. And moving on to an interesting rematch because the Bears played really well when they played the first time. It was Bears Lions. It's in Chicago, and we saw them march into Ford Field, and they had the game won. They were up 26-14 late in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden the Lions won the game, and you were like, "How did that happen?" And they spiraled down at the end. But I think the Lions have bounced back. They especially picked up the offense of production last week in New Orleans, and I think they do it again in Chicago. And this is more of a like I feel like the Bears defense because the Lions they don't have the greatest defense. They have a couple key names like Aiden Hutchinson and some other ones, but I mean all around this defense, needs to be some improvement there which could end up hurting them later. But I think against this week, against the Bears, I think they win this one in a little bit of a high scoring matchup.
You said you had the Bears.
I meant Lions.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah. No, that's okay. I I think I have my cat sitting on my desk right now. I have this is I think going to be pretty close. Um, I think it was going to somewhat replicate the first match, and with some of the aspects of the Detroit defense that are already missing as of this week. I think we could see some breakdowns. I think it will be close though. Um, I think that this is a just good opportunity for the Lions to, like you said, get back and reassert themselves as the team that they are. And it shouldn't be hard against this Detroit defense. Sorry, this Detroit. Oh my gosh, it shouldn't be hard against this
Chicago.
Chicago offense, um, who are weirdly able to produce in some of their like in that primetime game they had where DJ Moore had 5 trillion yards and 7 billion touchdowns. Um, but I don't see this happening again.
Yeah, I mean, it's this Chicago offense. I mean, we've seen them do what they did in Washington, and I was very angry because I mean, it came out of nowhere. And then and I mean, they did the same thing in Detroit, and then they just have their bad games. Like this is another very inconsistent team that you can't, like, you think you can predict how well they're gonna play, and then they do the exact opposite, you know?
Hmm.
So it's just gonna be very interesting to see. But as I mentioned, this Lions defense has some questions. Like they haven't played the best. So I'm interested to see how well they're able to stop them there. But yeah, I think the Lions still up winning.
It is a watchable though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I would definitely put on.
And then 49ers versus Seahawks. You've mentioned a little bit how you don't think they're going to win, but I they the 49ers, they're on a roll right now. They dropped those 3 games and then they came back from bye and have started winning again. And I don't see them stopping, especially against a Seahawks team that is, I mean, they played well in Dallas, but I mean, they're not they're not anywhere close to the Eagles, and we saw what the 49ers did to them. So, and this would be like kind of like if the 49ers win this game, it'll kind of lock up the NFC West for them. So I think they'll come out and play and start really hot, and I think they kind of run away with this one against Seattle.
I don't have nothing more to say other than I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Seattle Seahawks are not making the playoffs, and this is going to be a stepping stone in that process. Period.
Yeah, I mean, me and you, we've spoken on the Seahawks a lot, and I think we're pretty much on the same page now after these past couple weeks. So we can
Here,
move to
the only way that they actually get out of this game is if DK Metcalf is able to do what he did again.
yeah.
If he can do that, if he can do that against a kind of a squishy 49ers secondary, then that is a possibility. But even then, I don't see that offense beating out a 49ers offense that is on a roll.
Yeah.
Period.
And then Vikings Raiders, I feel like is another one that is just, I mean, again, it's 2 backup quarterbacks, except the difference, Raiders bench their starter. Like it's choice by choice, which it was the right decision promoting O'Connell. And I mean, he's been serviceable, but Justin Jefferson's back. I feel like he's gonna bounce back in a big way this week. And I got the Vikings because I feel like Josh Dobbs did have that. Who was that against where he threw 3 interceptions? Was that Chargers?
That was the Bears game.
It was Bears. I don't know why I thought it was Chargers. They played Chargers early in the season. But yeah, this I don't think that's going to be another problem for Josh Dobbs, especially against this defense. I mean, they have a good pass rush, but I mean, they don't like got anything really past Max Crosby, feels like at times. So I actually got Vikings putting on a decent offensive performance in this one, especially with J Jet's back, which will help a lot. It'll take the workload off of Addison.
This one's kind of hard because I think that the Vikings, if they lose this game, it gets pretty difficult going forward to find wins as well. You got 2 games against the Lions and then a Bengals game and then the Packers game. So with the way all those teams have looked recently, I'm going to go ahead and call this game a must win for the Vikings. Um, they are, I guess, within fighting distance as it relates to the Lions. And the Lions have kind of been on a downward trajectory recently, so maybe if they can win out these games, that they can challenge them for the division. I just don't see it. Getting getting Jefferson back is going to be good for everyone. Um, but I still, it's not that I don't believe in Josh Dobbs. I think that he's going to have a game where it's going to have to he's gonna have to produce mediocre results in order to come back from I think it was a four interception game against the Bears
It was,
total in the end. What was it? Was it 3 or 4?
it was one of them. I know he did. He at least threw 3. He
Yeah,
may have thrown a fourth one. It was 2 weeks ago, so I don't really remember
yeah.
off the top.
He threw 4 interceptions during that game. I think I don't think he's going to be able to come out of the gate just firing on all cylinders, even with it being a bye. Um, and I think that ultimately this Vikings defense is really, really bad. Um, even with Brian Flores, not like we're not talking about bad in like in terms of the Giants or anything like that, or anyone within that caliber. I just think that Brian Flores has not really been able to put anything together with some of the losses that they had. I mean, you lost Dalvin Tomlinson and Zadarius Smith, both who have been particularly helpful in other teams. Um, so I actually just trust the Raiders to be able to get things moving, especially with O'Connell and um and and Josh Jacobs and Devontae. They also have more weapons on defense in that of Max Crosby. So give me the Raiders in this one.
Raiders. I mean, this game could go either way, and both these teams are. I mean, they're both still in playoff contention, especially since the Raiders have looked since they fired McDaniels. But this next game, me and you've talked a little bit about Broncos Chargers. Chargers are actually favorited right now, which I feel like is insane after the performance they put up last week. And I don't think it gets any better. And the Broncos, they did lose to Texas, but I feel like they still are riding a little bit of momentum. It is tough to lose that game, but against this Chargers team, I feel like they can still win. Because I mean, the Chargers now have the worst coach in football, who should be gone by now. I don't know what they're like. What's the point of keeping him around? I mean, you have been like very vocal on that pretty much all year, and I think the Broncos win this one handedly.
I genuinely think anyone could beat the Chargers. Like I genuinely think if you catch the Chargers in a bad week, the Giants could beat them. Like I think that that is the situation that we find ourselves in as it relates to the Chargers and as it relates to Brandon Staley currently being employed in that city. Um, they're coming off of a really just come on guys, 6 points against the Patriots. Granted, they have a really actually scaled defense, even with some of their losses in terms of injuries, in that of Christian Gonzalez. But in my opinion, the Broncos are just as accomplished. And unless Vegas just completely believes that this team is entirely momentum based, and that this Denver loss against Houston was kind of like a punch in the mouth, I see no reason why they should be favored. Uh, and I'm kind of buying in on the Broncos, man. Now, don't get me wrong, I would love it if they lost because I don't want them biting on my kneecaps going forward. But I really do think the Broncos are going to be able to put together with a very physical defense and then an offense that has somehow found a way to make Russell Wilson pretty productive.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers. I mean, I think we've both made our opinions very clear on them. So I mean,
Yeah,
we're
and
saying
then
the same thing week in and week out.
here's the thing. If if people actually believe that this is the skill of the Denver team, like then maybe they don't really have an easy schedule going forward because they do play the Lions, the Patriots, the Chargers again, and then the Raiders. So like these are all teams that you would probably say, other than the Lions, are worse than Denver. But if Vegas believes that like this team is entirely dependent on them being able to string together wins, then maybe their path to the playoffs isn't so easy. So I guess we'll see going forward. But but yeah, I think that someone must have typed in something wrong when
Yeah,
they were setting up their rates because I don't know how you come to this conclusion. All right, now we're coming up on something interesting here. We have the Bills and Chiefs coming off of a game where the Bills actually they looked really good against this
Eagles.
now granted they're coming off a bye, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Eagles we discussed that earlier, but the Niners. Um they looked decent and they looked like they were coming into playoff form. It's going to be hard getting there though when you play the Chiefs. I actually do think that the Bills will win this one. When you look at where these teams are going, a loss to the Packers. is a real big stain on this Chiefs team, and it's obviously not going to affect their playoff chances at all. They're already at 8. They're already at 8 wins. But I think the Bills know that this a win to this team is going to be really important going forward, especially with bigger fish to fry on the horizons and that of the Cowboys. And then you got the Dolphins as the last game of the year. So I genuinely think that they feel though they have a confidence and that they believe that they can walk into Arrowhead and get this win. Um, and I think that as much criticism I've levied towards Josh Allen, uh, I think he's going to be able to put them away during this game with a Chiefs team who clearly are struggling with the wide receiver department, and Travis Kelce hasn't been able to produce like he normally has. So give me the Bills.
Yeah, it feels like these teams they schedule these teams every year,
Yeah,
and it's for some reason it's always an Arrowhead.
you're right. Yeah.
It's always an I don't maybe last year they played in I'm thinking I don't know. Last year they played in Arrowhead as well and the Bills won. So like this matchup is never in Buffalo, but that's a different topic. And usually I I would usually pick the Chiefs here just because the Bills are on a losing streak, but this this matchup I feels like the Bills always win the regular season matchup, and I think they do it again, but I think that's because they're gonna go into desperate mode and realize they need to start winning games. They can't really afford to lose anymore. Because I mean they're sitting at like 10 or 11 seed right now in the AFC picture, so they need to string some win together bad, and I think they step up as a team and get the job done in Arrowhead. And also, I don't think this Chiefs is as good as they have been. I think this may be. I think we may start to see this team fall down a little bit, but that's a topic for another day.
Very interesting though.
Yeah.
All right. Out of our last three, we've got what potentially could be the best game of the week, and that of the Eagles and Cowboys. Um, this is a rivalry that we've seen really come and rear its ugly head recently. Uh, I've I haven't really seen Eagles and Cowboys fever like we have recently. Um, and with the Eagles losing to the Niners in the way that they did, the Cowboys are certainly coming in as the more empowered team. And I think that with it being at home and with the Eagles uh, recently having that loss against the Niners, it's going to be hard to string anything together against this defense, um, unless your name is AJ Brown, because I think AJ Brown will have a big game, and that soft coverage that the DBs do have sorry, not in Cowboys, in Dallas, will lend itself to a number of opportunities for him. I just think that uh, you're not in a situation where you want to be in a shootout with the Cowboys offense, because I think that even with the record being in the Eagles' favor, I think that the Cowboys have a better, more productive and consistent offense. With Dak, in my opinion, he should be seated above Jalen Hurts in MVP odds. With him putting up a season of that caliber, I think that I would bet on the Cowboys.
Yeah, I disagree. Um, I feel like everyone's I don't know, because the Eagles have played back to back to back to back 4 games in a row against high teams in the NFL, top teams in the league, in Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, and now Cowboys. And they played Cowboys the week before the Chiefs, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, and that it did come down to the final play, but I trust Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown for them to be able to win to in their run game is very underrated as well. For them to be able to put drives together in the clutch when they need to because they have proven their clutch. And Dak, he always has questions in these big games. And I think the Eagles march into Dallas and win this game in a very highly contested. It'll be close. It will come down to the final possession again, and I think the Eagles get it done for a second time this year.
Do you
I
do
just
you
trust
trust the Eagles offense more than the Seahawks?
the Seahawks. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta with AJ.
Yeah, and AJ,
It's
especially if DK cooks that one corner, what do you think AJ Brown's gonna do?
yeah, that's a good point. Hmm. I don't know. I still believe in I just like I think that AJ Brown seems like the only real avenue for this Eagles offense. I mean, obviously you have that tush push, which basically makes every yardage like 1 and 9, but they haven't really got the ground game moving recently, and that's a concern going against this defense. If they don't feel like they have to protect the run as much, then I think that they're going to be able to protect other assets, and they're going to be able to shut down AJ um, if they really want to. I mean, here's the thing. Like I said, I do think that he has a big game, um, but I think that there will be another opportunities that they'll be able to shut down because the Chiefs found a way to really shut them up as well, or shut AJ Brown down. So there's a way to do it, and I think if you can take some of your assets away from the run, then you could see a situation where maybe the coverage is a little bit less soft.
Yeah, this
But
this
we
game
will
will
see.
be this is a great primetime game,
Hmm.
and this will be one that everyone's watching.
Yeah, they were cooking on this one.
But however, I don't think you can really say the same for these two Monday Night Football matchups. 'Cause I think these two are not the greatest in Packers, Giants, and Titans Dolphins. The first one, this Giants offense, I don't know what to do with them. I mean, they did win the last game, but that was against probably the second worst team in the NFL and the Patriots. And the Giants are down that chain too, and the Patriots are not the Packers are on a roll right now, and I think they march into MetLife and dominate this Giants team, kind of similar how they did the Lions in Detroit, but I think
Yeah,
worse.
I think that we shouldn't even talk about the Patriots game, or not that we shouldn't talk about it because it is important. It's the game that was right before it, but we shouldn't really give them that so much of a credit for that win because it was about to go into overtime. Um, had it not been for a potential intentionally missed field goal by the kicker for the Patriots in order to get a better pick, because I don't know if we talked about this last week, but that was a really important game when it came to draft seeding, and it's possible that they just genuinely didn't want anything to do with playing that game anymore, and they were happy with the loss. I don't. I'm being a little bit facetious. I think that they genuinely did want to win that game, but I don't think that the franchise is very mad. Uh, at the end of it, I mean, you get a good draft pick out of that. What's one win on a what are they, two and
The
is it
Giants,
two
I
and
think they have 3 wins.
the Patriots though, I think they only have two. I think
Patriots have
they're
2. Patriots have
two.
2.
Yeah. So it's like what's more one more win on a 2-win season? Like it's not happening. So I I I agree with you though completely on the Giants and in your analysis on this Packers game. The Packers are on a roll. This should be a display of their dominance again, and it should be a stepping stone towards the playoffs. Uh, just leaning on Jordan Love, and then hopefully we're in a position where we get to see Aaron Jones again soon. But even without him, AJ Dillon is enough to remain productive on this Giants defense. I'll be interested to see how many points they can hold this team to, because even with Tommy DeVito being the quarterback that he is, and the lack of wide receiver depth at all, um, you still have Saquon Barkley, so I can see him being a factor, but not enough to win this game.
And then our last matchup is Dolphins Titans, and I don't think it really changes the way we look at this game either. Because I mean, we got will like we mentioned last week, this Titans offense is like feels like they're just all over the place, really. And we saw how bad their special teams was. I mean, back to like I don't remember if it was back to back block punts, but it was two relatively around the same time, and it got the coach fired for it. And this Dolphins offense, they're dynamic. We saw what they did to Washington, and I think they win this game by a lot as well because they'll be able to put up points. And I don't know if I can say the same for this Titans offense.
Yeah, you definitely can't say the same for this Titans
Yeah,
offense. I mean, Will Levis has been able to make this team competitive, um, but he hasn't been on the level of CJ Stroud. And the situation that the Titans are in is just kind of icky. Like, you might have a game where Derrick Henry is able to produce, um, and then you're gonna probably have two more games where he isn't really able to make anything go. It's also interesting to note that he was also a member of the injury list coming out of this most recent game, which I think led to the loss. When you have to rely on Tajay Spears, it's that's not the best situation that you want to be in. Obviously, Tajay has been someone that um, that the Titans feel like they could rely on because they've given him touches during every game and taken some away from Derrick. But I think that was a pivotal loss as it related to the loss last week, and it's certainly not going to help him if he's out going forward. Um, the the Dolphins have a high flying offense, and I see them just using this week as more of a resume builder for the one seed, and I think it's going to be pretty dominant and a night where we're going to have to pick our poison because both of these games are the exact same time on a Monday night. So
oh, they're at the
I think
exact same time.
yeah, I think the idea was like, okay, so we can't give them any good primetime games. We can't make this interesting at all. How about we just give them two crap ones? I think that
Yeah,
that equals one really good. Um,
but
so
no, that's not how that
it's
works.
not how it works at
That just
all,
makes you
actually.
not want to watch
Yeah,
football.
that means I will be watching basketball. But I know I'll be watching this. I will watch these games, but it's like I will also be keeping track of where we're at in the NBA. So
Yeah.
um, we got some good features of this week, but we also have some stinkers. So thank
Yeah.
you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate you just giving us your time. Um, next, as we just get closer and closer to the end of the regular season, it's gonna be really interesting to see what teams are officially eliminated. I mean, we obviously have some already, but we have a good half of the league who's still really competing. And as we come down to the wire, I think we're going to see some really desperate and interesting games. So you'll find it here. You'll find some analysis about what we think going forward. Let's see how we live up to reality here coming forward in this weekend. Um, but like I said, thanks for listening. We really appreciate your dedication and sticking out with us. Um, so yeah, have a great rest of your weekend.
All right. See y'all.
See
Peace.
ya.